when we define the title, priorities, when we say priorities, it doesn't necessarily mean that one is not important, but it actually is talking about that all of it are important, but one may be regarded as more important than the other and deserving the right to take precedence. One thing is that a woman's life is different than a man's life. Many women are comparing themselves to men, even in the Islamic community, and there are many reasons to that. A lot of times, when it comes to women learning about their Islam, it's mainly male shuyukh, and the male shuyukh are going to be usually more aware of, let me say, the dynamics of the man's life and not the dynamics of a woman's life. And what happens is that a lot of sisters actually get confused and feel lacking because they start comparing themselves to a man's life. Well, in a hadith that's not authentic, but I'm still going to say it. Asma bint Yazid ibn Sakan actually compared, it's not very live, but I'll say it despite, it's Asma bint Yazid ibn Sakan actually came to the Prophet ﷺ and said that men actually get to do jihad, they get to go for Jum'ah, they get to go for Jama'at. What do we get? And the Prophet ﷺ turned and said, did you ever hear a woman that is more aware of asking about the religion than this woman? And Asma bint Yazid ibn Sakan was actually named as the Khatibat al-Nisa, as the orator, or the woman that was always strong and courageous to ask about different questions. Yet, just as the Prophet ﷺ answered her, based on the situation, and said that if the woman, and replied that if the woman prays her 5 daily prayers, fasts her month, and obeys her husband, and the list goes on, then she will be told to enter Jannah from any door. Now, although the hadith is not authentic, but it's not extremely live, meaning that we can let me say, get the inspiration from the hadith to understand one thing, that a woman's life is different than a man's life, even when it comes to Islamic duties and the priorities that a woman lives. When we lack female role models, that becomes very hard. It's not that they don't exist. It's that a lot of times they don't have the time to appear in public because of the priorities. So it's not that necessarily they don't exist. They do exist. The criteria for prioritization is the question. What is the criteria when we want to say that something is a priority and more important than another? What's the basis that we depend on? Number one is that we depend on maqasid al-Shariah, the principles of Islam. The principles of Islam are derived from the Quran and Sunnah, and also the universal maxims of general Islamic rulings and Islamic jurisprudence. When we say that the Islamic principles are actually the lens that we look through in order to regard something as a priority, those principles are in the order that you see. Islamic Sharia is about preserving and securing the communities and individuals. Deen, that is spirituality and piety. Nafs, that is their life. Chastity, that is the ird. Aql, that is the mind. Mal, that is the wealth. These 5 categories, they must be in that order when we talk about prioritization. It must be in that order. Once you change the order, then you actually considered one wrong thing in terms of its importance in Islam. The resources of Islam are actually the lens that we look and see through in order to regard what we regard as a priority. Number 1, the Quran. 2, the Sunnah. 3, the words and the reports mentioned by the Sahaba. Now, the 5 universal maxims of Islamic law are actually general guidelines that were derived also from Quran and Sunnah in order to help us understand how we prioritize. When we want to prioritize, they must not contradict the following. Number 1, the intention. Every single matter, what determines the action of it is the intention. 2, that there shouldn't be harm. We should seek to reduce harm rather than bring favors. We should always consider removing harm as a priority. 3, culture shall have the weight of law, meaning that culture can also be regarded as a reference. Not because something is part of a culture does not necessarily mean I don't want to apply it because this is just culture. It can be regarded as a resource or as a reference to determine how you're going to organize your life. 4, hardship shall bring ease. When we say hardship shall bring ease, you want to remember that generally you're supposed to consider what is easier, not harder. And when you want to consider what is easier, not harder, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not obligate you with something that you cannot handle. 5, al-yaqeen la yazulu bi-shak, or certainty shall not be removed by doubt. We base all the rulings based on certainty and not doubt. When we say we base things based on certainty, not doubt, that would actually mean that if you're not sure of something, you cannot regard that as a priority. We're going to get there. The levels of prioritization have from a different angle. Number 1 is that there's a darurat, there are the necessities, and the necessities, number 1, preservation of life, mind, the chastity, the religion, and wealth. All those things actually act as the preservation for darurat, which is what we talked about last time: deen, nafs, aql, ird, mal. Religiosity or spirituality, nafs, life, 3, aql, mind, 4, chastity, 5, wealth. Needs are less important than necessities because darurat you cannot live without. The necessities you cannot live without, but the needs, they will make your life hard if they're not there. But il-hajiyat are still more of a priority than al-tahsiniyat, which are different improvements, but no hardship will be there. To give an example in life, darurat, or on these parts, when we talk about necessity, water is a necessity for life. Needs, refrigerators are necessities for preserving the foods. If you don't have a refrigerator, most of your food is going to go bad. Refrigerators became hajiyat. Cold water, if you don't have a freezer, things will be hard, but it's still, or you would say microwaves or freezer, for example, in the refrigerator, or a cold, or let me say ice, becomes tahsiniyat. It'll make life easier, but if it's not there, if your freezer does not freeze, it's not the end of the world. You can still live. When we talk about prioritization, what is the evidence that in Islam that type of prioritization is allowed? Number 1, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَجَعَلْتُمْ سِقَايَةَ الْحَاجِّ وَعِمَارَةَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ كَمَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَجَاهَدَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Now here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, are you making those that do Hajj or build and construct the Masjid al-Haram as those that have believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Judgment Day and did jihad? They are not equal. in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that community service is not whatsoever equal to considering or equal to somebody that believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Judgment Day, and does jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, that idea of relativism, where it's just we're all doing the same thing, is actually not an Islamic resource. It's a postmodern idea. This is not Islam. In Islam, no. There is the prioritization. There is some differences between different things in different actions. It's not about however you see it. That understanding of individualism, meaning that you as a person act as the resource that understands or may consider something as a priority or favorable over others. It's not a personal choice. No, in Islam there is a reference. Although the ayah, like I said, the ayah did not consider that building the Kaaba and giving water to the pilgrims it did consider it as important, but it considered that faith, jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is at a higher level. In other words, a lot more prioritized or put in the precedence and is a priority over that type of community service. Another thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, do not curse the lords or the gods of those that associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that they may not curse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although there could be some benefit if the person was somehow condescending the religion or the gods of others, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually forbid that we condescend or degrade the religion of others, because the priority is to not have anybody go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by considering that they're harming Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or harming the Muslims, and that becomes the priority. In the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ actually said in the hadith narrated, in the hadith where Abu Hurairah said, أَفْضَلُ الصِّيَامِ بَعْدَ شَهْرِ رَمَضَانِ شَهْرُ اللَّهِ الْمُحَرَّمِ. That the best of the fasting after fasting Ramadan is Shahr Allah al-Muharram. Now, the Prophet ﷺ is considered Shahr Allah al-Muharram. Fasting those days is good, but the priority is doing the obligatory action. Another example where the Prophet ﷺ, when he was in Medina, the people that were part of the munafiqeen actually had started to make use of a disagreement that happened between the Sahaba, and then said that they wanted to expel all the Muslims that were immigrants from Medina. But the Prophet ﷺ, although he knew the names of the hypocrites, the Prophet ﷺ, when Umar ibn al-Khattab said, "Let me kill them for you," the Prophet ﷺ said that he is worried that people were going to say Muhammadun yaqtul ashaba, that Muhammad kills his friends. So the Prophet ﷺ prioritized, even though they were causing the fitna, he prioritized that people would not be afraid to enter Islam than actually removing that particular fitna that these people are doing. Now, when we talk about prioritization, there are certain guidelines that must be considered. Number one is that obligatory actions precede recommended and liked actions. This is just a few points. We're going to get to details in just a bit in giving examples. 2, seeking high virtues precedes other less important virtues. Concealing rituals precedes revealing them. Another one, Islamic creed precedes Shariah. In other words, when we talk about raising our children, it's very important that you first teach them the Islamic creed over the action first. The evidence on that is that how the Prophet ﷺ actually when when Abdullah ibn Abbas said that the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal. Mu'adh ibn Jabal was one of the Sahaba that the Prophet ﷺ actually sent to Yemen. And the Prophet ﷺ actually told him that you're going to come to people that are part of the people of the book. Let the first thing you call them to do, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then tell them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had obligated them to pray the 5 daily prayers throughout the night and the day. If they learn that. In other words, when he says if they learned that, if they had digested that obligation, then teach them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had ordered them and obligated that they would pay the charity from their wealth. Then if they had absorbed that, then teach them that فَخُذْ مِنْهُمْ, then teach them and tells them, then take from their from the poor and take from the rich and give to the poor. Now, generally speaking, when we talk about women's priorities, unfortunately, the situation that we're living in today, that feminist groups and secular perspectives are actually influencing the Muslim discourse. And a lot of times, that type of influence is actually making many Muslims racing to prove that Islam had come with the same understanding of life as secularism and feminism, without us realizing that we're actually plagiarizing a non-Islamic philosophy and thinking that it's Islam. And many will say, well, Islam says this and this and this, and we'll actually start editing the word of Islam just so that they would feel that they fit in. When we talk about a priority in a woman's life in Islam, the most important thing is to remember that a woman's life in Islam, home is the priority. When we say home is the priority, we would actually think of many secular and feminist groups that are actually trying to push women outside of the home, and we tend to always race in Muslim groups and da'wah groups in trying to say that Islam gave the woman to leave and Islam gave the woman to do this and this, and then we start thinking that this is our race, that this is supposed to be what we're racing in. Although it is indeed a right for the woman, or let me say that a woman can seek education, there is no doubt about that, but the priority for woman's spirituality is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even told the mother of the believers, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى, and dwell in your homes and do not seek that atonement or that cosmetics or the different appearances that people were considered of during the pre-prophetic era. The Prophet ﷺ explained Jahiliyyah at many instances. This was the word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to teach Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, to teach the mother of the believers. The mother of the believers were the best example to teach later women, the Muslimin, al-Muslimat, al-Mu'minin, wal-Mu'minat, how to attain spirituality. Your own home is the best place to attain spirituality away from the different types of fitna. Yet, although that is true, many do need to go for work. They cannot live without having a job or without going to school, and that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had regulated the different regulations of leaving the house, in other words, being in public, whether that meant hijab or whether that meant shaping, whether that meant in behavior, in lowering the gaze, in serious talk, reducing intermingling with men. That is to help with spirituality. Even when you go in public, if you want to attain spirituality, you must consider these different regulations. The other priority is that to go public, it must not affect her priorities at home. especially if she is a mother. The priority at home, the children at home, the husband at home, is the priority over the public needs. We're going to talk about this. When we look at priorities in a woman's personal life, considering self-piety before correcting others. Considering self-piety before correcting others is one way of focusing on the heart. Yet, it is very important when we talk about considering self-piety that does not mean that we end Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, ordering for what is good and forbidding what is bad, because we still didn't get there. Nope. One way of doing considering self-piety is by doing Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, because then you will think, why am I ordering others and I'm not doing it myself? That's one way of actually giving yourself the maw'idha. 2, religious and livelihood support starts with those that you're responsible for, then expands to others. Meaning that your work at home, your relationship with your children, your own maintaining your first responsibility at home is the priority over helping the community, over helping your friends, over helping your in-laws. Your priority is your own home. An Hakim ibn Huzam, that is the uncle of Sayyidah Khadija and Abu Huraira, they actually said, the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-yadu al-ulya khayrun min al-yadi al-sufla. Wabda biman ta'ul. That when we say high arm, it's like that when you have a favor, something that is better than not having those favors. Wabda biman ta'ul. And start with those that you're responsible for. Wa khayru sadaqati an dhahri ghina. Now, when we actually talk about priorities in a woman's life, considering these parts are not going to be alone, but you must also consider that the first priority is aqeedah. When we say considering, remember when we said in the previous lecture, we said that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was focusing on number 1, thought, then 2, tarbiyah, in order to attain al-ihsan. That's the same thing. You first, in order to correct the aqeedah, it is very important to actually attend the different lectures that scholars give in order to correct and make sure that you're actually following Islam and not following culture. We tend to think of culture as only the culture that comes from the Middle East. No, there is a postmodern culture that is amongst us, that without you realizing, you would think that, okay, I'm at the U of M, there is no culture. We tend to more associate culture to back home, or to Somalia, or to India or Pakistan, and we tend to think of that as culture. But we don't realize that the culture that is in Somalia, for example, is actually closer to Islam than the culture you learn at the U of M. Because the culture of Somalia generally is actually coming from, at least most of it, from some type of Islamic resource, but then it deviated a little away. But the culture that you learn at the U of M is more atheist culture. Without you realizing, you would actually think that culture is there. Without you realizing, you're absorbing a totally atheist culture without you realizing to actually think that it's not culture. No, it's another type of culture. It's another type of culture. Now that is why, in order to make sure that you're not absorbing a wrong culture, an atheist culture, it is very important that you actually learn aqeedah in order to know where the crookedness actually takes place. You're not going to know where the crookedness took place unless you know what's haqq. And that's why learning aqeedah helps you distinguish the batil. The Prophet ﷺ actually said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ لَا تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ حَتَّى تُؤْمِنُوا. The culture that right now, the postmodern culture, it's all emphasizing on what they call good. Faith is not an issue. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ actually emphasize that faith starts in order to correct your understanding of the world around you. It starts with correcting the thought. Because without people realizing, thought will actually influence the tarbiyah. It will influence the way they define right and wrong. It will influence the way they see everything around them. And then finally, it will influence how they live their life and eventually influence the relationship towards one another and towards God Almighty. All the prophets actually came with one particular message. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن قَبْلِكَ مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدُونِ. The main message that all prophets were sent with was that they were supposed to be delivering the message that there is no deity worthy of worship but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, it is very important to note that when we talk about spirituality, that heart and spiritual therapy and precedes physical therapy. When I say physical therapy, I'm talking about the outside, not the physical therapy that we know. Leaving forbidden matters precedes obligatory matters. When we say leaving forbidden matters, that becomes where it becomes exactly the words of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, مَا نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْهُ فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ. What I ordered you to leave instantly. What I ordered you to do as much as you can. When we say that the Prophet ﷺ said, when I ordered you to leave instantly, because leaving sin is a priority over trying to add more ibadah. At the same time, obligatory actions are precedent over nafila, precedent over nafila or sunnah that you do. For example, the husband is the priority after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because obeying the husband is the priority, even if feminists tell you no. Because they obey everybody else except when it comes to the husband, they'll tell you no, it's degrading the woman. It's not degrading the woman, it's actually considering that the priority of having a stable home is the priority. The other part, activities, jobs, friends are not to be prioritized over the husband in your household and responsibilities. Family is precedent over volunteering. Taking care of your family and helping your mother is more important than helping your friends and being there for them. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ وَالْمِسْكِينَ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. Give al-qurba, give first the close relatives their rights. Then if you want to donate for the miskin and the ibn sabil, the person that's lost, that's an extra thing. But آتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ, but give the close relatives their rights. It is very important, considering the core, that is a priority in Islam, considering the core over the appearance. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually talked about how the people of Ad, or the different nations, how they had strong built bodies and beautiful built homes. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that all that has been wiped away because they did not have the iman. The core of your home in its aqidah, and Islam prioritized that over income. For example, another thing, affording an Islamic school for the children is more important than having a fancy house and a fancy car. Considering the stability of your home and how people think, considering stability of your home over how people think of you or your friends' expectations. Unfortunately, a lot of times we don't realize that we're concerned about what people are expecting of you, whether in-laws or others, and don't realize that your home is the priority. Seeking a man's piety in marriage is more important than seeking his looks, income, and his funny character. This is very important. Unfortunately, I get a lot of girls that actually say, oh, he's charming, he's really nice, etc. But he just doesn't pray. Wait a minute. This is the answer. Deen is a priority. It's not the six-pack that we look at. Omitting evil is prioritized over bringing favors. When we say omitting evil is prioritized over bringing favors, just simply because the evils, especially when we talk about evils, not all evils are at the same level. The evils that affect your deen, nafs, remember those levels? The evil that affects the deen is more important than the evil that affects the nafs. The evil that affects for example, here's a question. A sister might say, I want to travel outside to Philadelphia. My family is in Minnesota, but I want to go to Philadelphia. And I want to get a degree in who knows what. And I would say, preserving your nafs, preserving your deen is a priority over preserving your money. Yeah, you'll probably get a good degree. You'll probably get a better job opportunity, but preserving your deen and preserving your nafs is our priority. Before we talk about getting a good college degree or a good opportunity for work in the future. When we talk about applications on omitting evil over bringing favors, if a sister is facing fitna in her deen for not being married, protecting her deen is a priority over getting a degree. You see the priority? Remember, D-N-A-I-M, Deen, Nafs, Aql, Ird, Man. That's how we do it. Teaching the children their Islam and protecting their faith is more important than joining sports and activities. Because a lot of times we get a lot of people there, oh, my son, he has a birthday party. Or he goes to sports, he plays soccer or whatever it is. He doesn't have time to do Quran class. I one time had a student who was doing very well in her Quran class, but the mom got her out of the Quran class because she had ballet classes to do. At the time, I was charging for the Quran class. I believe it was $50 a month. That class was $75 an hour. She told me she couldn't afford the Quran class because she had ballet classes to do. Wallah al-azim, Allah al-musta'an. A lot of times we're not realizing what we're prioritizing. The laws of priority in family. Your family precedes the community benefit. When we talk about the family precedes the community benefit, this is something, like I said before, each one has her own zone. You cannot compare yourself with another sister because you might have a disabled child and the other sister might not even have any kids. Don't compare. Each one has a priority that's different than the other. The priorities in husband and wife relations in case of disagreement. Sincerity over your personal ego. 2, winning the heart is more important than winning an argument. It takes 2 to fight. If one chooses not to fight, the fight is over. Right? It takes 2 to fight. If you decide to take out, slip away, the fight is over. If your spouse is angry, try to take a calm position. When the fire is set, remember, your priority becomes to turn it off. Right? Never sleep with an unsettled argument. Remember in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ actually said that if a man calls on to his wife for bed and then she refused, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, or the Prophet ﷺ actually says that those that are in the heavens will be angry at her until he is content. Of course, the feminists don't like this hadith, but I do not regard what the feminists regard. I don't care. I'm somebody that regards that ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Having a stable family is more important than implementing your opinion on worldly matters. Because our opinion, it can be influenced by different things around us. Now how much time is left for me? We're done? All right. So there's more details, by the way. I do have a YouTube channel. There's more details on that. You guys can go on the YouTube channel. There's complete detail on all of this. So وَصَلِّهُمْ عَلَى سَيِّدْنَا Muhammad. Aisha was. Oh, Gems of Light, I think. It's either Gems of Light. Just search me and you'll find me, inshallah. وَصَلِّهُمْ Muhammad. Go ahead. One or two questions. Nobody has a question. Oh, go ahead.
When you talk about home is the priority, are you talking about like there has to be like 3 meals ready before you leave the house for the day? What do you mean by home is the priority?
The home is the, okay, so that takes us to the back.
Should we ask the question again?
Should we, yeah, I'll ask the question. Again, when you say home is the priority, okay, I hope I can see this.
Home, husband, yeah.
So when we talk about home is the priority, all right, you look over here, you've got, when we look at the home as a priority, the number one, we're looking at husband, children, and house maintenance, okay? First, it starts with the husband, and meaning that the husband, his deen, nafs, aql, ird, mal, all that, you could see there's a lot more details, but the husband, for example, and that's the number one thing at home. Then the children, and then maintaining the house. That goes into that type of prioritization. When we look at the children, considering their religion over considering their health. And considering their health is over considering, for example, different things about mind. Considering their ird, adab al-istidhan, the manners, the lowering the gaze, dealing with the opposite sex, all that is part of the prioritization. Not gender. Yes, the word gender is not an Islamic word. I know, you guys laughed about it. The word gender actually comes from a very postmodern idea. It's not an Islamic word. I know you guys laughed about it, but thanks for laughing about it. The word gender actually comes from the idea that regards that your body, your biological creation is different than your social responsibility. In Islam, no. Your biological creation determines your social responsibilities and duties. All right? That's what determines. If you are biologically female, you have to take the role of a female. If you are biologically male, you take the role of a male. All right? Gender is not necessarily, as many think, that it's just another appropriate word for the word sex. No, it's not necessarily an appropriate word. It's actually a word that carries a philosophy, an atheist philosophy. The feminist movement actually began that in order to say that what you are biologically created is not necessarily what role you take. And that's where the idea of LGBT came in from. This is another important thing. Thanks for laughing about it. Okay. The other thing is that when it comes to the priorities in the household, second, making your home a place of tranquility by being salihah, by being faithful, by being a qanita, doing the dhikr, and by keeping the amana, becomes the way in that priority in order to attain mawadda, love and mercy amongst the husband and the wife. There's more details on the website because they're about to shoot me out. They're gonna put me in a cannonball.
Do you want to make it I know this young girl wanted to ask a question. Can you make it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. But can we make it as quick as possible?
Just to make it clear, your like children and family come before your husband, right?
No, husband comes before children and family.
If you're married.
Yeah, husband, if you're married. If you're not married, mom and dad are your priority. If you're not married, mom and dad are your priority, and then brothers and sisters. Mom and then dad, and then brothers and sisters.
And then what if your husband, like let's say you're in a feminist group and stuff?
If your husband is in a feminist group, wow, that's a new one. Yep.
How about the wife? I think the wife, she has too, because it goes, everything goes too,
The wife comes too.
قصدها يعني إذا هو he is your first priority, also have to be his first priority.
Absolutely.
the wife.
So I'm here considering that we're talking to women. So if it was men, I would have been giving them something else.
The wife is not only there by herself, there's a husband there too.
Absolutely.
So I think, two humans who came together, their own choice, they have to be there each other,
Mhm.
because one cannot be there without the other one.
I don't disagree.
Having kids, here, and they have all these families that are living here, I think it's easier for them to show up, because the thing that the whole thing they think it's only we just focus on the women always, So I know the lecture is all about women and all about girls and all about wives, but there's some young girls, who grow up here, and when they hear, we're only focusing on men, they're like,
Okay, so I think I see what you're saying. So here we're actually here addressing our talk to women. If we were addressing the talk of women's rights, that would have been a different story. But here, what I was asked to talk about was understanding the priority of a woman's life. So that's why I was addressing that way, in order for us to know, okay, what comes first, all right? And I usually like to emphasize on things that we usually don't pay attention to. So I'm not here talking about eating organic foods. All right, and because I usually address the things that people don't normally talk about, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. If it were a lecture on talking about women's rights and what their husbands are supposed to be doing to them, you'd have been thought that I was a feminist.
Muslim feminist. Muslim.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. There's no such thing as a Muslim feminist, you guys. You can't be a Muslim feminist. It's like saying an atheist Muslim. That's an oxymoron. It doesn't work.
Allahu Akbar, ya.
You can't say a Muslim feminist. You know why? Because feminism actually comes from the idea of atheism. Feminism regards that it's the struggle. Listen to this, you guys. Ballah aliki, bas one word. Feminism regards that Darwinist idea that it's about a struggle, a survival, that it's about a struggle for survival. That's why when they talk about husband and etc., that you have to fight over your rights, because they regard it as a struggle for survival. In Islam, it's not a struggle for survival. It's a harmony for mawadda and rahmah. In Islam, it's about bringing stability. It's about bringing love and mercy, not about let me fight you and let's fight. This is very important, because the idea of feminism comes from that core, and comes from the core of atheism, that it's all about complete equity, that I and you are not any different, because the biological creation does not determine my social status. In Islam, no. Your biological creation determines your social status and your responsibility. You are a mother because God Almighty made you a mother, gave you the body of a mother. Therefore, you act as a mother. Therefore, you take care of your child as a mother. Now, same thing. You as a man, you've got the biological creation that decides that you're going to take a certain role. But the feminist organization, or the feminist ideas, I'm aware that there are different kinds of feminists and all that. But the different kinds of feminists, we talk about the origin of it, the etymology, the base of it. Before it becoming different types of feminists, we talk about the main philosophy that determined the understanding of the rest of the feminists. Even if you have so many different kinds of feminist groups. Now she's going to get a cannonball with me. Throw me out.
جزاك الله يا شيخ، جزاك الله خير، جزاك الله خير، جزاك الله خير.